So, Gene, or Billy.
They can't see you sitting
Are we
down
on?
like that.
Yeah. Why don't you move to the
Sure, you can all see us, right?
They're my,
She's here.
my pals up there.
Shall we stand?
I think there's good news and there's some bad news. The good news that I see is that the therapeutic state wasn't always here. It started sometime, perhaps 100 years ago, maybe a little less. And the good news as I see it is that this fashion will end at some point. It will change, regardless of what we do or don't do. The bad news is, I don't see an end in sight. Do you?
Do I?
Yeah, do you?
I'm trying to be really optimistic, and I'm also a fool. So yes, I think there's something in sight that might be better than what we've experienced in the 20th century. When Ken was talking, I was thinking about the choices that we've had in the 20th century of living in psychotropia. Yeah?
Just for the camera.
And now in the 21st century we have potentially beyond the therapeutic state, but within it also
This is not.
state therapeutics.
This is not his. This is his.
So not only in perhaps one's medications for problem solving, but now we have a psychotechnology war where one's model is now better than another, and state therapeutics is potentially taking over. How that fits with ideas of classification and commodification, it certainly fits with the commercialization of talking. Yeah? And it seems that in this audience we are experts, we might say, in talking. But do we want to commercialize it in a way that potentially the state can capitalize on it and tell us what to think and how to talk and when to talk? But I'm optimistic. I'm very optimistic. I remember talking with a group of midwives, it was from Botswana, when I was asked to talk about therapy. It was the worst experience of my life. And they told me that the idea that I was offering them in terms of the therapy model I was asked to speak about did not include the community. And they left me some words which I think have stayed with me, because as Ken was talking, I was fiddling about in my jacket and I took my wallet out because I wrote it down on a piece of paper, and I've had it now for 6 years. And it seems to capture, certainly from my optimism, I think there's something on the horizon. I think that's why we're here. I think that's why Ken is talking about beyond the therapeutic state, beyond this conversation that we might have. And those words are from the Botswanan folks is quite simply this. Well, it's not simple because it's very difficult to say, but it goes like this: Natwa, Kigolo, Keya, Molo. And from that group of people who were talking about how they help others, it means a big fight from the mouth. And that's what people do in Botswana when they're helping people in distress and with problems. They join in the big fight from the mouth. So I'm here to engage in a big fight from the mouth. So if someone wants to join me, you're very welcome. Did that answer your question?
Sort of, yeah. Ken talked about the rage to order. And my question is, are you talking about a new disorder? Are we still in the realm of pathologies? Where's the place for collective rage about our inequitable economic order that excludes, subjugates, damages, and indeed kills so many persons? And is this rage not a necessary, while very silent, set of voices within the collective societal creation of meanings? In other words, can rage and anger be compatible within a collaborative approach? Or must rage always be suppressed in the interest of fostering collaboration? This I find an interesting question to think about. Another question, you talked about the ideal of engaging in dialogue with others who are perhaps involved in what I would call the pharmaceutical, medical, industrial complex. This means expanding our own horizons of tolerance. I can imagine it would be very easy to create some new disorders, perhaps something like the sociopathic neoliberal pharma industry lackey disorder, or perhaps the coercive treatment disorder, or even what's already been called the pervasive labeling, and I would add and pill pushing disorder. But I think simply coming up with new diagnoses will greatly reduce the possibilities for collaboration. And the question is, can we find new and creative and indeed positive ways of thinking about persons, for instance, working for multinational pharmaceutical companies, companies that are willing to spend billions of dollars paying off courts and litigants while viewing the costs as the price for continuing to push drugs that are of little value and of great harm. I think this is also one of the challenges that we have. How do we engage in dialogue with the enemy without calling them the enemy? Because when we do that, we've set up a conflict. That I would like to talk about.
Thank you. I'd like to say something here about the medical profession. I do like the medical model for medical problems. No, I think it has its place, but if I can just give you a little snippet of maybe what Ken was alluding to when maybe beyond this conversation we can have conversations with drug company people or policymakers or other folks. And in the past 5 years in the UK, we've spent 1.2 billion pounds, no, 1 billion pounds on drugs that don't work. And not only have we spent 1 billion pounds on the drugs, but the government themselves have said it's better to cycle and swim and be in a relationship and talk with people than take the drugs. They should be a last resort, is what they say. But we hear always that they're a first resort. And that's just over the past couple of years. But I think there needs to be a rethink of what I might call psychoeconomics. If we could have money like 1.2 million pounds and put it into something that's more useful, like conversations like we're having here, so we can make a difference. I think that would be much more useful. So bring on the politicians.
in the interest of a diversity of voices, because I think that is also one of the major challenges that we have, to increase the range of voices that actually get heard. I would say we have some great problems, not only with the cycle of infirmity. When Ken was talking about the cycle of infirmity, it reminded me of the work of Ivan Illich, who wrote in his Medical Nemesis many, many years ago about the ways in which the expansionism of the medicalizing of everyday life has basically iatrogenically created many, many new problems, which then, of course, professionals have to treat. And I think the question is a broader one, not only beyond the therapeutic state, but maybe even beyond the medical state. When we think about the pharma industry and how many hundreds of billions of dollars are spent on not only the pharma industry, but on health care spending, and the numbers of professionals, the numbers of people that are involved in the anxiety-making machinery that causes us all to continue running to doctors. The question is this the kind of society we want to have? Are there other ways of imagining, as Sheila talked about, ways of caring other than this medicalized world?
Are we nearly done?
I think so, because to tell you the truth, these questions are very important, but in 5 minutes, Germany and the United States are going to be playing a soccer match.
And guess what? He supports both teams. But just to finish off, I think something occurred to me as you were talking, Eugene, and some of the ideas that we were jotting down. There are lots of jottings, I think, on people's paper here. They want to say something. They want to put their words into the room. I think it's really important. I'm not suggesting we do that, because I know you're excited about the football match now. But what I would invite you to do, if you like, is that this is the biggest whiteboard that I have ever seen in my life. Look at the size of it. Yeah? If we put the screen up, I would invite you to come down, and if you could just write something on the board or put something on the whiteboard for us. And maybe by the end of the conference, we've created a motif. We've created something that will speak to what the conference is about. And it might just be a question or a word or your name or something. But the whiteboard is open for business. Thank you.
I don't have a planned thing. I didn't know whether you wanted to open up for discussion or what. Huh? Well, just open up for general discussion.
And let the soccer fans leave.
Yeah, soccer fans could excuse themselves and open up for general discussion.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. We were just talking, and before the football match, if someone would really like to see the football match, just leave. But we will also like to open up for some discussion and dialogue before we go down. So, and you can ask questions here, or we can have the dialogue in the whole room. So, if you have any questions, please raise your hand.
Comments.
And comments, reflections.
Comments.
And those games only last an hour, right?
No, 2 hours.
2 hours.
Oh, listen. Help me listen.
Okay. I'm sorry, but it's like quite.
We can hear you.
starts before, it starts with oppression.
Yeah.
And because this was you know, we are clapping for it and we want a dialogue. But from my perspective, that's not when the conflict starts. It's not when I call out my enemy and say, stop oppressing me. The conflict starts long time before that.
More questions or comments?
When someone starts to oppress you,
Should we try without the microphone now? Or?
I have a strong voice.
Yeah, great.
I support what Messi said. We are from We Shall Overcome, and I love that name for our organization. We shall overcome. We can't hide the fact that this medicine perspective on life problems are doing great harm. And when one person in a family is touched by this great harm, the circle around suffers along, and I'm a mother. And I didn't know then what I know today. And I know I have been deceived and betrayed, and my son is dead. He was treated to death, and I am now constantly aware of how many people are risking this fate. And of course, we shall be polite, but there is reason to feel rage and anger and use that energy, because there is great energy in anger. Yes. And we shall change this system because it's deadly. Thank you.
There's another comment here, down here. Well, what the heck, I'll stand up to that break. I like what somebody said at the beginning about a conference that actually really starts something, because I get so bored with conferences. So I think the thing is to take risk, otherwise nothing changes. So I love what those two people said, and I hope it's a strong conference, because otherwise it's just boring.
Elton?
I was very interested because before the conference we were talking about drug addiction before we came in here. Do I need to shut up?
Microphone.
And what interested me, I've done quite a lot of work in Africa with young drug addicts or people who are taking drugs, and never had to talk about the drugs, the coming off the drugs, the problems with, you know, withdrawal symptoms, having to have substitute drugs, and all the rest of this. They just come off the drugs if you give them a life and a future. And it was interesting because almost like the medical discourse came up, saying, but it affects the body. You know, if you're on drugs, it affects the body. Of course it affects the body. But so does creating a future affect the body.
Yes.
So it's beginning to, I was just, while you were talking, because that really struck me in that conversation we were having earlier, that maybe one of the ways is by joining some of this discourse, but in a way that one can change it. So that it doesn't become confrontative, but becomes a different way of taking it.
Yeah.
Try this once more then.
Yeah.
I'll try this. Ole from Denmark. I think we all know we've got many difficulties and problems. I think part of it is that the language, the vocabulary we're using has the background of what we can think of systems and everything that we're coming in. And every time we get in our minds or in our language to speak as if there's we and them. And every time we do that, we end up the same place. To change something, we'll have to be able to find out how to speak with a we that includes everybody. Them and we is only we, and we have to speak in the way that we dare say we and include the ones we now think of as them. And if we don't do that, we end up just supporting what we want to fight.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Monica. I come from Canada, but I'm Mexican. And I live right now in a world of academics. And one of my duties as a postdoc is to write articles and books, book chapters, etc. But the question that I have been wondering since 1 year ago is, okay, we have written articles, we have written books and given workshops, but the question remains, which other ways we can find as academic or practitioners to allow the others, those that some we can call enemies or not, but which other ways we can find to allow the others to hear our voices that goes beyond articles, books, etc.
Yeah. Yeah. I was listening to some figures here, billions of pounds for medication and endless trillions used to advertise medication and so forth, and it started to sound a bit daunting. But then there are other resources, and we don't perhaps need to define ourselves as being in opposition to something, but trying to align ourselves with other forces. And there's no dearth of resources, because from the point of view of Finland, psychotherapy training is a minuscule industry. Less than 5 million euros a year is the scale. The government subsidizes therapies to the tune of about 100 million a year, which is a good thing. But on the other hand, the government puts in over 500 million euros per year currently, just to finance disability pensions from depression alone. That's only the pension cost. And if you add to that the other costs, loss of production and so forth, it's a multi-billion euro expense to the economy. Now, those are billions that are being used, and those billions could be used in different ways. So we don't really need new financing. We just need to align with the policymakers to help them make better use of the massive resources that are already in play. So this becomes politics and the new psychoeconomics, which may perhaps come out of this as well. Thank you.
There's a comment from Margaret and Karina and you.
Thank you. Oops. Thank you. Thank you.
I think it's because it's
okay. Okay. Instead of.
So try out that.
Okay. I speak without. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. I'm Margaret from Germany, and I'm listening to the things we say and also the questions we raise. If we can maybe find better words or find better words so that they hear our voices, or what voices should we hear? In order to increase change or make change happen. And sometimes I wonder if we can also hope for something completely different. For example, when horse manure, horse shit, was overflowing Manhattan, they were having committees and trying to find solutions after solutions to stop that problem. And you know what stopped the problem? The cars, right. So sometimes, and many things, so sometimes something more useful, something more attractive, something that is just working better comes along. And I would like to think about that. What could it be that we could invent or support that's just more attractive than a dialogue of illness, a dialogue of pathology, and using medication?
Okay, now I see, I'm gonna try to organize this. So Karina and you, Christine, and then it was, please raise your hands again. And then these are the three has the last comments, and then we're going for a drink and a music concert, okay? And we will continue the dialogue during these days. Okay.
Can I use it? I just felt the need to... I'm a psychotherapist, but I just felt the need to also say that I believe in also sometimes to take a stand, and not always to try to, how can I say, of course it's important to try to understand and to have a dialogue, but I also would like to say to those of you speaking from your point of view, that I also find it important from our point of view to take a stand sometime and not to be neutral always and not to think that we can be objective because we can't. We also participate with ourselves, and that's needed to be shown also, I think. So.
You have to try without.
I have to try without? Oh. Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, I just wanted to respond to the woman in front of me whose name I don't know. Monica, the question of what else can we be doing? Because I think we can have all kinds of conversations with the drug companies or people who are against them and have alternative approaches. But where are the voice of our communities? Where are the voice of the patients? Where are the voice of the people who are mentally ill? I'll put that in quotes. And what about the overall environment that is creating the mental illness, which is increasing poverty and segregation, that I think as mental health professionals, we have some responsibility to respond and work on the bigger picture and bring our patients and communities into this dialogue.
I'm Carl from Denmark, also a survivor of psychiatry. Recently, the parliament, the politicians in Denmark, our government decided to spend plenty of millions Danish crowns on psychiatry. They are very proud. They're building new hospitals, doing a lot, and they expect us from the user survivor movement to clap our hands and be very happy. And they don't really understand why we are not so happy, because they feel very proud. Finally, they say, now we'll make the somatic part of the health system equal to the psychiatric. And the problem is they think all the same. They think we have well-defined diseases and we have treatments to cure you. They took our recovery concept, but they bring the recovery concept into the traditional system. It's very difficult. We try really in Denmark now to empower the open dialogue movement, and it has some win. That's some win for the open dialogue movement. But everything what is happening from the national approach is more or less against it because of efficiency, and you know how they think. But I think a problem, because this is about politics. When we speak with some of the more progressive politicians in our parliament, they tell us, well, if I dare to speak critical about psychiatric medication, I get all the politicians against me. So how could it happen? How did it end like that? Why do the public, why do the politicians, the parliament, why do they think that psychiatric medication is the true answer to our problems? I really wonder, why did we end there? And how can we change it? Because I read some papers from pharmaceutical industry, how pharmaceutical industry build strategies. They are really clever. They build strategies how to convince politicians from US into Europe about certain diseases and certain treatments. it's really a strong power, and it's not enough that we agree and dialogue. It is about power structures, and it's really about politics.
My name is Jeff, and this is making me think about a Sicilian story I heard once. I'm not from Sicily. And the Sicilians are very fond of St. Peter. He's like the kind of village kind of fool. And St. Peter and Lucifer are walking down the road. And St. Peter's feeling pretty down because people are doing lots of bad things and so on. And then he sees somebody from the village spots the truth lying on the pavement. And he bumps Lucifer and says, "Hey, look, this person has found the truth. I got one over on you, Lucifer." And Lucifer says, "Nah, don't worry." He says, "Within an hour or so, he's going to turn it into a concept." And so the link for me was with what you were saying earlier, Ken, about the first step towards something's demise is when it becomes a solid belief, an orthodoxy. And there's a friend that my wife Ariane and I know who's an architect who does quite a lot of work in Africa and also in India. And he has this idea about tight fit design or loose fit design. And there's a place for both, but sometimes they can be misplaced. And the tight fit design is typically when somebody from a big distance away has a decision about some kind of standard formula, and it's convenient, and you know, you can make money out of it and so forth, and then you impose it onto a structure that it doesn't fit. Whereas loose fit design is where you actually look at what's happening and see what resources and what resourcefulness there is within that system. And then attempt to maximize that. But the design can be kind of weird. And so perhaps for us, in terms of survival of the fittest, it's about looking for a way in which we can get into that dialogue with the other around fit and the loose fit or the tight fit and what might work for us. But I do agree with the idea of taking a stance as well. I think that's really important.
There was one more here, wasn't it? Well, I'm sorry, the Rolf, you have to wait till tomorrow, sorry. But here, what's your name?
Paul.
Paul, that's the last one. Before. Would you like the phone? Or
I'm under the thing. Well, I think I agree that politics have to be involved in this. And that politics is basically how are we going to divide up the resources available. And I think one place to start is in a country like the U.S. at least, if there was a guaranteed income every year that you didn't have to work for or apply for or anything like that, it would go a long way to solving a lot of problems. Because I also think people need to take a stand. I think what the pharmaceutical industry has hit on that's making it so profitable is that they've actually come to a technology that will turn anyone into a docile body. You know, and until we can liberate our anger and our motivation to fight that, we're just reinforcing that, by being so docile ourselves without the drugs, So,
So let's continue the dialogue downstairs, and tomorrow and during these fantastic days. Just a few reminders of tomorrow. There's a bookstore right across the hall here, which is only open before and in breaks. And as you can see, it's only 2 doors in, so please come a bit early before it starts, because otherwise we just sit and wait. So enjoy, go downstairs, and there's going to be some music, a drink, and have fun.
There's a bookstore, so it's book of the people here.